Rashida Tlaib, cut 9. I just want you to listen to this, Adam, because as I was going through this, I have a question for you. So here is Rashida Tlaib. I want everyone to listen very carefully.
All those that, from college students to those in the workplace, I'm getting the calls of people being pushed to silence, being bullied. Some people weaponizing anti-Semitism in a way to silence voices. All of that needs to stop. Americans have a right to speak up. Americans have a right to the institutions they work at or the people that represent them to say, look, this is my opinion. I believe you should support X, Y, and Z. And again, we have to be able to make sure that as we look at all these forms of hate, that it is not being weaponized in a way to silence voices like myself and many of the voices that are here.
Am I the only one who can actually smell the hypocrisy?
You're definitely not the only person that can smell the hypocrisy. The one thing that we know about Rashida Tlaib is that if the weather says that the sky is blue outside, she'll find a way to say that the sky is orange. She's been a supporter of the BDS movement, the Students for Justice in Palestine, the Muslim student unions. All of these organizations have been shown to have ties and financial ties to Hamas. And all of these student groups have clearly used acts of violence and intimidation to silence Jewish students' voices on campus. That's why we're seeing the hearings in Congress that we saw over the last 72 hours. What's happened is that the Palestinian national movement, the majority of that is falling apart because of the realities that were shown to be on October 7th. And, Representative Tlaib has been a strong supporter of the Iranian regime and also Hamas. And now Hamas, after this war, will probably go on trial for war crimes. This is a great example of a frantic woman not knowing what to say or do after her cause showed her hypocrisy.
Yeah, and the rest of this is I thought, my goodness, suddenly the left cares about free speech. Wasn't Maxine Waters the one who was telling her followers that they should surround Trump supporters if you see them on the street, and you surround them and you let them know that they're not welcome? And isn't it the left that told us that who developed the concept of hate speech? So if I don't like something that you're saying, that's hate speech. You're a Nazi and I get to punch you. Wasn't that the left that did
150%.
Yeah.
Yes, 150% it was. And now that the left has been, I guess you could say, the veil has been torn back, or we see the man behind the curtain, and it's really Adolf Hitler or Khomeini. I mean, it's absolutely insane to not even recognize the hypocrisy of what the radical left is spewing now, because it ended up being that they were the Nazis. And if you look at the tactics that the revolutionary socialist left or the progressive left has been using, they've been using the same tactics that the Nazis have used during World War II and prior to World War II to silence opposition. It's no different also than what the Communist Party of China or the Soviet Union did. It is the same ideology. Look at the things that they're supporting. Follow the money of their supporters. It's very clear. And I want to say that again. Follow the money. You look at the 3 university presidents that had to testify in Congress the other day, and you've seen millions, hundreds of millions of dollars are being pulled from these universities. But I don't even think they're worried about it, because they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars funded to them by Qatar. And as we know, Qatar has bought up more academic chairs over the past 30 years in America than any other country. So I want to just say it again. Follow the money. Who are these people being supported by, and what are they supporting? And it's clear that they're supporting absolutely radicalized leftist Islamic programs or Islamist programs that are meant to perpetrate an un-American agenda, so to speak, or an anti-American agenda, and an anti-Western agenda.
So I want to talk about that. I wonder if it is starting to backfire on them now. Ross Stevens, the founder and CEO of Stone Ridge Asset Management, has now decided that he is withdrawing a $100 million gift to the University of Pennsylvania. It was given in 2017 to help establish a Center for Innovation in Finance. And earlier, this is not the first time he's done this. He earlier redirected a different $100 million gift from Penn's business school to the University of Chicago. So now they just lost a $100 million donation. And if you look, there's an interesting thread on TV from the Daily Pennsylvania on Twitter from the Daily Pennsylvanian. And you can see how this happens if you look. Yesterday at 5:41, the Daily Pennsylvanian reports that a university spokesman said there's no board plan for imminent leadership change. 6:08, half an hour later, you've got the governor of Pennsylvania saying that the trustees should meet to determine whether or not President McGill's comments reflect the views and values of the board and the university. A half hour after that, at 6:31, the Wharton Board of Advisors is calling on the university to change leadership. So in less than an hour, the message changes from nothing to, yeah, we're looking at changing leadership. And you get to 12:04 a.m. when you've got John Huntsman, who is a former alum and a former United States ambassador, calling for her removal. And 6 Republican Congress members from Pennsylvania also called for her to be removed. None of those women are going to withstand this. They're all going to get fired. So is this starting to backfire?
They were caught with their pants down, perpetuating Jew hatred and anti-Semitism. So in terms of damage control, and also the dean of Penn, made a statement revising what she said in Congress as damage control. But I don't think financially. I mean, listen, many Jewish donors have started to pull their gifts from universities and the endowments that they've given for chairs. I don't know if it's a good thing because Qatar can just go in and buy up more chairs and control these universities. We're looking at the Islamization, in a way, of the American university system, and it's starting from the top down. I don't know if it's going to backfire on them yet. And I can tell you right now, one of the things that's going on in the Jewish community is that people are discussing sending their kids when they're 18 more to Israel for gap year programs, to go to the army, and then to go to university. So there might be a huge exodus of Jewish college students in North America, especially to some of these elite schools. There's a lot of questions that are going to have to be asked and answered. I can't tell you whether or not this is going to have a major effect on the university system or not. What I can tell you is that they'll always be able to find funding, especially foreign funding, that definitely wants to promote some type of academic anti-American agenda. But I would be remiss to say this can't hurt them. I mean, it's definitely harming their reputation. But what we're seeing is that the American elites, a part of the ivory tower, have been bought and have been bought off and have been putting professors in crucial roles, perpetuating an un-American ideology that is very anti-Western, that is creating, the generation beneath me to be the generation that's praising people like Osama bin Laden on TikTok.
Exactly. And Adam, we're just gonna take a quick break here. We're gonna come back. I want to talk about the calls for ceasefire, and then I have one quick question for you to kind of sum this up and tie it all together. We're speaking with Adam Scott Bellos. He's the CEO of the Israel Innovation Fund. You can find him on X at Adam Scott Bellos, Bellos. More coming up on the Brian Kilmeade Show.
Expanding your knowledge base. It's the Brian Kilmeade Show. From his mouth to your ears, it's Brian Kilmeade.
The United States must make it clear, as the country that funds Israel to the tune of billions of dollars every year, no more war, no more bombings. We must at long last have a permanent ceasefire that guarantees the security, peace, and justice for Palestinians and Israelis alike.
Joining us is Adam Scott Bellos, the CEO of the Israel Innovation Fund. Adam Scott Bellos on X. Adam, that right there was valedictorian Ilhan Omar. And she's calling for a ceasefire. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was there not a ceasefire in place on October 6th?
There was a ceasefire in place on October 6th, and we recently just got out of a ceasefire that Hamas violated, which is why the fighting has resumed. it's the most hypocritical, excuse my language, asinine thing to be suggesting at this point in time. And it really showcases the lack of understanding of the realities on the ground that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party has.
Yeah, it's all one-sided. Let's talk about what's happening on the ground. We've seen some visuals come out of, I saw some video of Israel starting to flood the tunnels that Hamas has dug under all of Gaza. And they are flooding those now. I don't know if they're flooding all of them in certain areas. How do they know that they're not flooding the hostages, though? How do we know that Hamas didn't leave hostages in there because Israel said we're going to flood the tunnels, which I don't understand that. How do we know that they're not killing their own people and the Palestinians are getting out?
Well, I mean, there was always this risk, even before we sent in ground troops, that when we were bombing Gaza from the air, that there was a possibility that hostages could be part of the collateral damage. I assume, based on the fact that we were able to risk so much to try to get this last group of hostages out, I believe we got 47 of them out, something like that, or close to that. I believe that if we're flooding the tunnels, it has to be for a major security purpose, probably because we're unable to locate the subterranean tunnels via the air, or this might be the actual best way to flush out, so to speak, the fighters or the high command that could be hiding underground.
Now, we saw that picture yesterday, and the left is losing its mind because Israel posted a picture, put out a picture of all these Hamas fighters, and they're in their underwear with no shirts on. Yeah. Two or three guys have shirts on, and the left is losing its mind. It's, that's terrible. It's inhumane. It's humiliating. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is war. War tends to be inhumane and humiliating. That's one of the things. And at least they're not being...
I'm pretty sure that the events of October 7th were inhumane.
Right.
I don't really see the inhumanity of captured fighters being stripped to make sure they're not booby trapped. It's pretty regular military action.
And that's the point. But it doesn't matter about the truth. It just matters about the optics, right? And Israel has to know that no matter what they put out, the left is going to twist it to criticize Israel and to support Hamas. And they still will tell you, they poo-poo, the women who were being paraded naked through, taken back as hostages and were being spit on and raped. And the men were being raped too. I mean, and we're somehow memory holding that, and it's all about a picture of men with no shirts. I've seen that at the beach, right? So I don't know what was so humiliating about that. Now I ask you to tie it in with the flooding of the tunnels. Is that how they got them? Did those guys all scurry out like a bunch of rats, and that's how they got them?
No, I actually know exactly what footage you're talking about because I shared it to social media quite shortly after that footage was released on Telegram. Those were fighters that actually surrendered to the IDF. This is before the tunnels were flooded, if I'm correct. And what's happening is that the IDF, being the elite fighting force that it is accomplishing the job of complete and utter destruction of Hamas.
Yeah.
And the fighters are seeing it, and they're realizing that this is a lose-lose situation. And I just want to go back to what you were saying about talking about like the situation of these gentlemen being stripped and tied as being inhumane. And I just think, like you said, the left will change anything to fit their story, as well as ignore the things that don't fit their story. And we've seen this, especially with Rashida Tlaib and the rest of the members of the squad, who have failed to still condemn the heinous sexual violence that was perpetrated against men, and now we know, women, and now we know men on October the 7th. It's the same type of hypocrisy from the UN and the UN Women Council. I think we're at a point, and I think Jewish people and Israelis are at a point where we realize that the majority of the world understands what's going on. The change is that, the left has been consolidating for 20, 30 years, using the Israel-Palestine conflict as the main thing to perpetuate their ideology and cause, tying everything from the civil rights movement to immigration in the United States back to the Palestinian issue with Israel. And, as time goes on, I don't see this gaining momentum. I actually see this weakening the left, because eventually Jewish Americans are going to have to say, am I going to be voting for the same person that Rashida Tlaib is voting for? You know, this Israel issue may be the actual thing that completely changes the entire trajectory of the next election. So I do think that you're right that the left likes to twist things and use it to their advantage, but I think they've overused it to their advantage. It's like that guest that you offer a drink of like good whiskey when they come over to your house. They don't just have one drink, they try to drink the bottle, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, I don't invite those people over. And that kind of, we've got like a minute and a half here. It dovetails with what was going to be my last question for you is, why did it take so long for the Jewish population in this country to wake up to what the Democrats stood for? How did they not see this?
Could you rephrase the question? I apologize.
Why did it take so long for the Jewish population in this country to not see what the Democrats truly stand for? Oh, my Jewish friends, I would say 90% of them vote Democrat, always have, always will. And it's always puzzled me. I don't get it. And now they're like, oh, like they're starting to wake up a little bit. And I'm thinking to myself, what took you so long? We've got 1 minute.
Yeah, no problem. I actually really think the issue is social issues, and that's been the main thing that has always prevented a majority of the Jewish community from voting non-Democrat or Republican. Jews tend to be more liberal. They also tend to be pro-choice, but they've always agreed with the Republican stances on Israel. And I think that has a big thing to do with it. I also think the fact that you've had the rise of this progressive wing has definitely woken up a lot of Jews. Also, I mean, very simply put, we had 4 years of global quiet. And the second that President Biden was elected, it was global conflict after global conflict. Right. And it's very clear. I mean, within a year, there was a war in Israel.
Adam, I'm sorry, I got to cut you off, but thank you so much for joining me. Adam Scott Bellos, find him on X at Adam Scott Bellos.